Welcome back, Screenagers. It is time for yet another episode of the Canon, your favorite movie podcast, the one and only movie podcast, providing you with a watch list of the most essential movies ever made. My name is Raf, and we've got another amazing episode lined up for you today. If you joined us last week, you know that we're celebrating the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So last week we were able to speak some Fellowship of the Ring, which means today we are, of course, talking about the Two Towers, and joining me to talk about said Two Towers and this amazing movie, two of our favorite Saw contributors, two absolute legends. We have RJ, who was on last week. She's back to talk more Lord of the Rings, and joining us again today is Romona. So, ladies, how are we doing? How are we feeling about the Two Towers?
Very excited. I love this movie. Obviously.
Yep. I was pretty excited for Fellowship of the Ring, but I am definitely more excited for this one. It's my favorite.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. I said last week that the Fellowship was my favorite, but then I was rewatching this one and I was like, is the Two Towers also my favorite?
And then you'll rewatch Return of the King and then you'll say, wait.
Yeah.
Is Return of the King my favorite? And that's what's so great about this trilogy is all three movies are just top tier.
They're all favorites.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's why we love them. It's why we're talking about them. It's why they're closing out season 4 of the show. Very exciting stuff. I feel like we've got a lot of movie stuff to talk about here. So I think if it's cool with you guys, I think we'll just dive right in.
Yes.
Let's just talk Two Towers. So last week, RJ, because you were on to talk to us about Fellowship of the Ring, we got a bit of of your background in terms of like your relationship to the trilogy and the books and everything like leading up to that movie and sort of where you were anticipation wise. I think, Romona, since you weren't on last week, it would be great to get sort of like where you were specifically going into this movie in terms of anticipation and all that stuff. And then RJ, obviously, we should also hear how you're feeling going into this one as opposed to, how you're sort of feeling going into Fellowship of the Ring. But Romona, why don't you sort of kick us off? Like, were you a big fan of the books, or had you just seen the first one and then you were like, now I'm super psyched for the Two Towers? Like, what did that all look like for you leading up to this one?
Yes, the last part. I had not read the books when Fellowship came out. But my dad did read these books and loved these books. So he was very excited about the movies. And then my husband was very excited about the movies. So I was just kind of like, okay, we'll go see this movie. But then after Fellowship, like I just fell in love with the story and Middle Earth and the characters. And I was really, really psyched for Two Towers. Very happy that we didn't have to wait several years in between each movie. So going into Two Towers, it was, I don't know. I can't remember the last time I felt like that much anticipation for a film. Maybe, before the new Harry Potter movies came out, I was that excited. But the thing about the Two Towers is just the quality of the movies really blew me away. You don't have to be a fan of fantasy, those kind of movies to enjoy it, I don't think. I think these are movies that are made for everybody. So I was really psyched for this movie. And sometimes you have a big letdown with the second part of a trilogy, especially when you love the first one so much. It's hard for the second and third movies to really live up to that first movie. But I think that's what makes the whole trilogy incredible, and especially the second movie, because I do think for a lot of people this is their favorite movie out of the three. So that's just, I think, a testament to.
Is it for you?
I think I just rewatched it today, so I think it might be. But now that I've rewatched it, I'm like, I didn't have time, but I was like, now I got to watch Return of the King to kind of finish it off.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll, work from home tomorrow and watch the third movie while I'm working. But I think right now it might be my favorite out of the three. It just has a different, like the first movie is it's setting up everything. To me, it kind of has like a cozy feel to it. I don't know if
Mhm.
that makes any sense.
No,
But that's kind
100%.
yeah, like,
We were definitely talking about that last week.
oh yeah, for sure. And it's just kind of takes you on a little journey. It's exciting. You get to know everybody. This one kind of, you're like full throttle. This is, this is what's at stake. Everybody's in peril. Frodo and Sam meeting up with Gollum. And it's just, this one really thrusts you into what could possibly happen. And I don't know. It's a really exciting movie, really great. I could probably just talk about the whole thing for the next hour, and I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I was very, very, very excited. And I was even more excited when I walked out of the theater and it had lived up to my expectations, because so very rarely does that happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excellent. I loved it. It was great.
An absolute treat
Yes.
in every regard, for sure.
Yes.
So, RJ, you were, like we were saying, big fan of the books, enjoyed the first movie. Where were you, like expectations wise, going into this one?
The anticipation was high. I was looking forward to this one from, the second after finishing The Fellowship of the Ring. And my best friend lived in, so I was in college when it came out, and my best friend was at college like 2 hours away. She drove to come see the midnight showing with me. Uh, so I think that was really one of the first times I ever did that. And it, it was packed. The theater was just super crowded, and we were way at the back of the line. And not being able to find seats, we just said screw it and sat on the stairs in the
Oh,
aisle.
nice.
Amazing.
Stayed like that
That's
for the whole movie.
dedication.
And yes, like it did no regrets. It was perfect. We just like you did not care that your butt was numb and that people were just like walking around you. It was fine. It was so yeah.
That's amazing. That's
That is
like
amazing.
a true dedication. Also, just like a bygone era in
Yeah.
movie watching now with like,
Yes.
reserved seats and all that. There's really nothing like a packed sellout theater where there are people who are like, you know what, screw it. We're sitting on the steps. You didn't care that you were a fire hazard. You had to see
Nope. Nope.
you had to see that Battle of Helm's Deep. You
Oh yeah.
needed to be there.
God, yeah.
And Legolas doing ridiculous stunts on the horses and the Helm's Deep walls and all sorts of things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
incredible. Such a like Ramona, to what you were saying, just a darker turn from the first movie,
Mm-hmm.
and in just like the like setting of a lot of the scenes. Like I feel like so much more of this movie takes place at night in like dark
Mm-hmm.
places. It doesn't have that sort of like clean, cozy, sort of like warm and familiar feel
Right.
of the first movie.
Yeah.
I guess to just like jump into it, there's so much here.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I guess we can just start here and just get this out of the way, because this to me like remains one of the standout, aspects of this particular movie for me. And I'm curious to hear if you guys agree, but I genuinely think that what Andy Serkis did as Gollum is some of the most brilliant acting that we've ever seen.
Yes. 100%.
Absolutely.
It's watching it today. I was kind of taken aback by that too. How well the effects have held up.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult for me to believe that this came out, was it 22 years ago?
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like that whatsoever when you watch them again. It doesn't. And Andy Serkis, I mean, I think that kind of acting, I think he really makes the case for why they should have Oscar categories for what he's done. I think, you know, he was in doesn't he play in Planet of the Apes, and
Yeah.
he does, yeah, and it's just, there's just something about his acting as Gollum. It could have been so ridiculous. It could have been kind of over the top. But the way that Andy Serkis makes Gollum feel like a real creature with real like feeling is incredible, because he is a terror to look at. But yeah, watching his scene in the and please, you guys, RJ, if you're more knowledgeable on what it's called, I can't remember at the moment. But when he's in the little pool of water and they're going to shoot him with the bows, but you know, Frodo tells him not to do it, and he kind of tricks him into getting out of the water so he can get captured. And he's laying there and he's having that conversation with himself between Smeagol and Gollum about how Frodo betrayed him, and it is terrifying, but so good. Like, it's incredible.
I want to say, is it just, it's like the forbidden pool or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know he says what it is to Frodo, and, you know, penalty of being in the pool is death. So kind of frighten him, but I can't for the life of me think of what it was called.
Yeah. But that, I absolutely agree. That scene is very chilling. It's like
Yes.
watching in like a psychological thriller scene where the murderer is devolving psyche, and, you know, as the viewer, you can see it. Well, in this case, you, the viewer, and everyone can see it. And it's just, oh man, he really is. He really is good. Um, it's hard for me to see him as an actor outside of
Yes.
like the person. It's like no, oh, he's Gollum. He's Gollum. This is what he looks.
Yeah.
Every time I see him doing like an interview or something, I'm like, wait.
Oh yeah. Rewatching 13 going on 30. I'm like, hey, it's Gollum dancing to Thriller. Like, it's just, you see Andy Serkis, and he's been in so much. Like, he's a great actor to begin with, but like, you see him, you're like, there's Gollum. You just can't. And I know that, you know, Ian McKellen and even Sean Astin got a lot of like Oscar buzz around this movie, and it still completely blows my mind that Andy Serkis was kind of overlooked for any kind of recognition, because I think he did something that very, very few actors could really pull off.
Yeah. You could throw him into best supporting actor. Like,
oh yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a special like mocap or whatever specific kind of like award. Like, the acting that he does as Gollum is as good as, I assume, as like any other performance that we got in 2002. I would have to look up like, you know, who else got nominated that year, but I would assume that what Andy Serkis did was as good, if not better, than what anyone else was doing. And to what you guys are saying, the scene, I think this is what the same scene that you guys are talking about, where he's like having the conversation with himself, and Smeagol tells Gollum to leave now and never come back. Like,
oh yes, yeah.
Like, that's just like amazing acting by any measure. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, that is just some of the best acting work that we've ever seen, and also amazing filmmaking by Peter Jackson.
I agree. That was actually one of my favorite scenes of the entire trilogy, I think, is when he's having that discussion with himself. Because the way that it's shot is, you kind of forget that he's one entity, and you actually think that there's two Gollums there having this argument.
Yeah.
I love the way he did that. And it's just, it's really difficult because Gollum is somebody that ultimately, like, you feel sorry for, and it's and I think that's a testament to Andy Serkis and Peter Jackson, is the fact that you feel bad for him even when he's being completely evil and trying to kill them, and kind of framing Sam to have that fallout with Frodo, and then of course in the third movie what happens there. So it's really difficult though to be like he's a villain when he's just this like little pitiful little thing that just was completely warped by an object. And the fact that you can feel bad for him, I think is pretty incredible, and I think again a testament to Andy Serkis for being able to convey that kind of emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. I also totally forgot how early on he's introduced in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of the first scenes. But I feel like that does help with us as audience members being able to like understand and like sympathize with the character in a way,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like I had always remembered him coming in a bit later. I always thought like the first scene was Merry and Pip and their
Oh
escape
yeah.
from the orcs and stuff. You know, when meat's back on the menu.
Yes.
It's uh, I think that it almost feels like the Frodo and Sam part is like a God, the word is failing me.
Like a prologue.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. Because yeah, it's so slow and quiet, and then you go from that to the action,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like that's when the movie starts. So I totally get that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Actually, that's a good point. They're very, because they're just traveling, and kind of building up that, I don't even want to say trust with Gollum, but kind of building that subplot while all this other crazy shit's happening around them. So when it kind of switches back out of, the Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas looking for Merry and Pippin, and then you switch to Merry and Pippin, and then and then suddenly they're just walking with Gollum. I don't think
Yeah.
things really pick up for them until, except until Faramir catches them, and then that's when it kind of starts to build for them too. But yeah, that's a good point. It is kind of takes you out of the action and kind of reminds you what the whole point of the story is.
Yeah. But it's interesting that it sets the table, and then
Hmm.
we go and like catch up with everyone else. So that does bring up another interesting point, because it is so different from Fellowship, where like Fellowship is, we're just like following Frodo's journey as he
Hmm.
like brings on all these other people into his trek. So RJ, like, what did you think of like the way that this movie is able to balance like and pace through all of the separate stories of like the different groups of characters and what it is that they're sort of doing throughout the movie?
I think much like the first movie, I like the pacing of it and the way that they kind of go back and forth. I don't know if there would have been any other way to do that, but it's done well, I think. Um, in Because I mean the scenes with Sam and Frodo and Gollum are so uh more like sedated. There's not there's that anticipation of things building up, but there's not a lot of action. So it gets a little slow, and then suddenly
Hmm.
you're being attacked by warg riders.
Yeah.
It's the back and forth works because it keeps you kind of on your toes. You like it's exciting, and then okay, calm down a little bit. I will say that, and I almost feel bad saying this, that the Sam and Frodo parts are not my favorite. I love I love all of the Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli parts, um, but not because they're not awesome. It's just
Hmm.
I love the I love the action at the Battle of Helm's Deep is absolutely some of the best cinema
Hmm.
ever. Like it's just
Hmm.
I could watch it. I could watch just that like over and over again, really.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Um, but I do. like that in each side you still see the relationships and how they are going.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously going better amongst the others than between Sam and Frodo because they've got the Gollum going on, his interference. But it's interesting to just watch how the different sections of the Fellowship
Mm-hmm.
are evolving, throughout the course of the film on their own separate ways.
Yeah.
Except for Merry and
Yeah.
Pippin, they do not evolve. They end up just pretty much as they always have been.
They're just vibing.
Some,
They're
long
just,
bottom leaf and
just
They're
guys
vibing.
being dudes,
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Hobbits being hobbits.
Yeah. Uh, okay, I think I agree that I prefer the like Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn part of the story. Mostly because when I was like first watching this movie, I was like 11 or 12, and I would like only watch those like action pieces, and like fast forward through anything that wasn't like those three characters fighting orcs and stuff. But I do think that there is that like the Sam, Frodo, Gollum pieces before they meet Faramir is like that's where like the core tension of the movie and like the dramatic tension is sort of like being worked out, because then otherwise we're just, not to say that it's bad to just watch like, cool action set pieces and like and all that stuff that's happening in like the Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli plot line, but yeah, I kind of get how like the two, or those are really the two main storylines, and then like Merry and Pip is just like a weird like throwaway like C plot, but you sort of like need the balance between the A and B plot, I guess we can call them, within this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I do agree that you need that balance with Sam and Frodo and Gollum, because it's Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli are the ones, kind of on the front lines trying to protect Middle Earth and get shit done. And, Merry and Pippin, once they get to the Ents, it's kind of slow moving there, but they're also doing their part, with to help get rid of well, not get rid of, but do their part against Saruman. And then, but with Frodo and Sam, they're the ones who are hiding from, Sauron's army and the orcs. And but the thing I love about it is like and like I said, I didn't want to call Gollum a villain, but their biggest obstacle is with them, because you can see how Gollum is starting to kind of pull at the threads of Frodo and Sam, and you kind of know that Frodo's starting to maybe lose it a little bit because of the ring.
Yeah.
And Sam's just trying to like keep shit together because Sam is amazing, and Gollum's just kind of, especially when the I guess Schmeagol, but when Gollum kind of starts to take over, like, oh, he betrayed you and he lied to you, shit's going to go down and it's not going to be good. And that kind of builds that tension there.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it less about, okay, well, now they're just walking and they're walking and they're fighting and they're walking. And now it's like, oh, crap, like he's going to do something really terrible to Sam and Frodo, and things are about to go down. And of course, that's when the movie ends. It's like, oh, you guys got to wait another year before you see what happens. But I thought it was brilliant the way it was edited, the way they interspersed all the storylines. I never got, there were parts that weren't my favorite, and Merry and Pippin are trying to like argue at the Ents to make up their mind about what to do about Saruman and everything. Like, I get where they're going with that and why they needed it. So there's some parts that aren't my favorite, but I never got bored. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always wanted to see, when they cut away and suddenly it's Aragorn, who I think is kind of the main focal point of this particular movie. But then, oh, okay, now we're back with Sam and Frodo. And like, I just enjoyed every single part, the way they jump to each section, because they don't let you forget what's happening. And that's a big deal to me. Like, it's not half the movie's Aragorn and then you go to Sam and Frodo and you're like, oh, like I want to kind of go back and see
Yeah.
more of Aragorn and Legolas and all that. They do a really great job at the pacing and making sure that you stay invested, I guess, in a way, in everybody's storyline, and
Mm-hmm.
because they're all going to kind of converse again eventually. And the journey of how that's going to happen is, I think they made it really exciting and emotionally attached to all these characters. You don't want to see anything bad happen to them, even if they're not in the most exciting, situations.
Yeah. It is. I mean, that's a great point that the pacing and like editing is never like, oh yeah, this person is also a part of the story.
Right. Oh yeah. Remember these guys? Here you go.
Yeah.
We
Even
don't
even
forget
when
about any of them.
even when Liv Tyler and Hugo Weaving show up in the middle of the movie, even then you're not, and Kate Blanchett, you're not like, oh yeah, these guys. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
like point in the story. It totally just like fits, where you're like, oh yeah, these characters are also here and they have stuff. Like I didn't forget about them at all.
Yeah.
Like it makes
Yeah.
sense that they're showing up at this point. Okay, one like really random question that I'm going to ask you guys, since we're talking a little bit about Merry and Pip and their sort of like weird side quest. But do you guys find it weird that this movie is like, I mean, I guess like this also means that the original text is also, but that this movie is like extremely like environmentalist and like anti like like anti big industry and like the Ents attack on Isengard.
I was rooting for the Ents, man.
Oh yeah.
But it's also very telling because they didn't want to get involved until they saw what he had done to the trees. So that was also very like, we're just going to take you back home. We don't care what's happening. We're not a part of it. And then it's, holy shit, he pulled up all of our friends by the roots and burned them. And now we're going to get involved and fight back. So, it was very, I can see with the theme of the environment and, like she said, like anti big company or corporation or whatever. But I always appreciated that about the Ents. Where like, screw everybody else. We're gonna just do our own thing. And then it was like, screw this guy. We're gonna kick his ass. Like, but that is one of my favorite scenes, honestly, when the Ents fight back and the water comes and you see that little Ent with the fire in his hair or his head and he dips it into the water. I don't know. Just like little details like that is what makes me appreciate it so much.
Yeah, no, that part's amazing.
You also you get one of like Pippin's few shining moments where he's not doing some
stupid shit.
And redirecting Treebeard to go past Saruman's tower so that he will see what horrible things are happening there. And I was always happy for him that he got that moment.
Pippin was always my favorite Hobbit, which is probably weird. I don't know why. I think he got a lot of crap for some of the stuff he did. I don't think he should have been blamed, but he had one of my favorite quotes in this movie was when he tells them, the closer we are to danger, the farther we are from harm. And I love that quote. I say it all the time. It makes no sense to me, but I love it. And I love that, Pippin, like you said, Pippin was the one who came up with that idea to take him by and show him what is happening.
Yeah, that line's kind of a bar. So is when Treebeard says, I'm on nobody's side because nobody is on my side.
Amen.
That's so sad.
It is sad.
But yeah, I always think that that's like super interesting that like, obviously Tolkien created this entire like Middle Earth and like thousands of years of legend about Sauron and this ring and this little hobbit Frodo and this great wizard and these amazing battles for Middle Earth and all this stuff. And there's elves and goblins and orcs and everything. And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of time to tell people why they should, take care of the environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just in the middle of all of that. Which, that's pretty rad. That's pretty
Hey,
cool.
if you can reach out and connect with people about various issues on a cinematic level and like creative in a creative way that they get it without it
Hmm.
being like, I guess, preachy, I am all
Hmm.
for that. I love movies that can like you some people might not even pick up on what you've picked up on. You know how it could be
Yeah.
very take care of your planet, take care of, where you're living, the environment. Some people might just watch it and be like, "Oh, that's cool." A bunch of even though they're not trees, but a bunch of trees running around fighting this guy and throwing fireball, blah blah blah. Um, but when you look deeper into it, yeah, you're going to see that message there and see those themes. And I'm down for any movie that can do that in such a creative way.
Yeah. I
Well, I
mean,
guess any book too, because obviously that's
yeah.
the main source of it. I did read Fellowship and Two Towers many years ago. I don't remember a whole lot about them, but yeah, it's pretty great how Peter Jackson kind of interspersed all of that into the movies, and I think that shows that I think he was a big fan of the books before he adapted them. So, and I think that shows.
Oh yeah, absolutely. RJ, do you remember if like I would assume all of the like pro environment sentiment was in the book too, and that wasn't just like added in by Peter Jackson. But I feel like you're the biggest fan of the books here, so
What's I don't know that I ever really. It's very, I know it's not subtle the way it happens, but I didn't really, in my mind, link it to necessarily intentional
hmm
um, portrayal of like environmental advocacy. But in the book, it is not. Oh my God, it's been many years since I read it. It's not the same, but it is similar. Um,
got it.
I mean, how, like they have to condense and rearrange and do lots of things, but I don't recall in the books. I may be misremembering that, but I thought in the books that Treebeard was more willing to help without, you know, having to be
Hmm.
into realizing it was the right thing. But I could be misremembering that. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, so
That would be an interesting choice, sort of like cinematically, to then like give Merry and Pip more like agency within the story and like something to do instead of just like being along for the ride, where they like have to convince Treebeard to, you know, help out and fight against Saruman.
And it was kind
yeah,
of like a little redemption for Pippin
Hmm.
for all the
yeah,
stupid stuff he's done
Yeah,
up to that point and will do later. It's kind of nice to see that he's like, okay, he's not just the comedic relief. He actually has some smart ideas too.
absolutely. The other thing, so like, right, we can assume that Tolkien's at least like some of his writing of this story was colored by growing up in like late 19th century industrialized England. But the other big thing that obviously like really colored his writing and I think is more apparent in this movie than it is in Fellowship of the Ring is how much his time in the war. And I'm pretty sure he fought in the First World War, not World War II. But I don't know if either of you guys can confirm or correct that.
He
I
did fight
believe.
in World War I.
Okay.
He was in the
Um,
army from 1915 to 1920.
there we go.
Yeah.
And when were these originally written?
Um,
Well, either
looking.
either way, I don't know if you guys are World War II nerds, but I feel like the whole like Two Towers is like such an obvious like axis of evil kind of like figure within the story. So it is really interesting to just like think about like there we have so much, so many movies and books and whatnot about World War II, but it is cool to like have stories about the great wars, we'll say
Mhm.
both of them,
Mhm.
that are also like these like epic fantasy stories. So yeah, I just wanted to ask if you guys had any sort of like thoughts on that, or if you're like World War II buff brains were thinking about that in terms of like, you know, the two towers and kind of like what they were representing or could represent from like real world examples.
Well, I'm going to say I know, like I've always known this, but I just looked it up. Jay, he started writing Lord of the Rings in December of 1937, and he finished it in 1949. World War II, I believe, started in 1939. I am not a war buff. My dad is, which may be why he loved Lord of the Rings so much. I'm not sure. I never really asked him about it, but I'm sure that there's some influence there from his time in the war. I would be shocked if there wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I also wouldn't be shocked if maybe he used, this creation of Middle Earth as some kind of, it's a creative outlet, obviously, but I think it could have also been maybe his way of, I don't know, kind of I don't want to say relive what he went through, but kind of deal with what he went through.
Yeah, like in a weird way to like process trauma
Yeah, yeah, process the trauma and what he
through
had to
like
do, and have seen.
fantasy escapism or something.
Yeah, and I can't. Obviously, he is long since passed, and I can't speak for his experiences or how he felt. But I do think that a lot of people who have been through trauma, especially in war, um, the creative type, whether they're a writer or they're a painter or however they like you said, they process what they went through their writing, and that could have been what he did with the Lord of the Rings. I mean, you look at, and not just Lord of the Rings, you look at the expansion of Middle Earth, and everything that he wrote surrounding it is pretty incredible. I'm not sure that, and I don't read a lot of fantasies, so I could be completely wrong, but it's hard to think of many other authors who were that dedicated to one
Mm-hmm.
universe as he was. So I think that he created something incredible, and obviously, with like Narnia, you see the Christian allegories in that, and I think with Lord of the Rings, I think you can see a lot of parallels to probably World War One or World War Two, depending on if he, interspersed that in there while it was happening. I don't know. I'm sure there might be a J.R.R. Tolkien fan who might be listening to this right now, who's probably screaming at us because they probably know more than we do. Than we do. They're probably like, "You're totally wrong." Enough that if that's the case, that's fine. But I don't know. I think that there probably is some symbolism there. I don't know enough about his life, and I know enough about World War II. I just don't know enough about it to kind of like watch
Mm-hmm.
those movies and then be like, oh yeah, this was
This is
representative of
that,
this.
yeah.
Other than like what everyone talks about, the Eagles in the films that come and save them. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
people like to think of that as like, oh, America swooped in and saved
USA.
Europe from Hitler. You know
USA.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's just dependent on how you decide to read into it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think so. You mentioned Narnia, and RJ, I'm going to kick it over to you. But weren't J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis like boys? Like, didn't weren't they part of like some like group of like English thinkers and writers who would like gather at maybe not like at the pub, but something like that, and bounce ideas off of each other and create these grand fantasy stories about these like magical worlds that they created that were full of allegories for like Christianity and good versus evil and perhaps a little bit of early 20th century European history. So RJ, what are your thoughts on all of that?
That there's a lot of all of that. So as far as the goes, I have no idea if they were part of a, little boy group that liked to sit around and talk about literature and writing fantasy stories. And if they were, that's freaking awesome. And I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for
Oh
those
yeah.
things. But as far as I feel like I have read somewhere that, that he at least loosely confirmed that there was some influence from his time in the war. But even if, I feel like it's one of those things where even if he didn't intentionally have that as an influence, it's it is easy to see the relevance, to see the symbolism there, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, a world war where like people from all corners of the globe are coming together to fight the evil axis of the evil powers. That's
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
that's the same thing as the people of Middle Earth coming together from all different parts to there's just like you
Yeah.
can't help to see the connection there. And even if he didn't do it intentionally, even if he wasn't thinking about that at all, it certainly is easy to see that. I mean, really, any story setting where you have a whole world
Mm-hmm.
fighting, that's even like stories we have today, like there's just that's the conflict to be told, and
Hmm.
it is very it is very human naturey, all of it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I think it makes all of it more real, because
Yeah.
every bit of it you're like, yeah, that tracks.
I mean, you can even see how it affected Frodo, at the end of the movies as a whole. I mean, he wasn't the same. And I think that can be said about a
Yeah.
lot of people who go off to war and come back. They're just not the same person anymore.
No.
Yep.
I also wonder how much of it was just like played up by Peter Jackson, because I think based on, some of the projects and stuff that he's worked on since, it is very obvious that he is at least World War II, maybe also a bit of a World War One, sort of like history nerd, history buff
Yeah.
kind of dude. And the last thing I'll say on all of it is, um, intentional or not, Gondor is extremely France coded. Like
Yeah, I could see that.
they're the French. They're right next to Mordor. They're always letting Mordor, get into whatever kind of shit. They're never stopping, Sauron from all of
And
his crazy ideas. They're just letting him be. They never have Rohan's back. It's right there. It's
The ruler is really fond of food and
tomatoes.
drink and
yeah.
tomatoes and wine and
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
being a little bit crazy.
If that's not France, I don't know what is.
Oh man. I'm gonna have yeah,
Yeah.
next I'm gonna have to really, when I watch it again, watch it like that.
Okay, let's move on to the fun stuff. No one wants to hear us talk about environmentalism and World War II
What?
allegories.
Well, they gotta
People
learn something.
I think
people are
that's
here.
correct.
They want to hear us gush over the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Oh
Yes,
my
yes,
god.
they are.
That's what the people
That's
are
why
here
I'm
for.
here.
That's why she's here.
RJ, you mentioned it earlier, and I did want us to circle back. Obviously, I didn't want us to go too big too early in the episode. We had to save Helm's Deep for a little bit later so that the people would stick with us. But I
Yeah.
feel like now's a good point for us to get back to it. So, RJ, walk us through everything that, in your eyes, makes the Battle of Helm's Deep so unbelievably spectacular.
Oh God, Raph. Like, okay, do we have 6 hours? Because I could talk for 6 hours.
Go for
So,
it.
first of all, um, I mean the visuals, like just actually seeing Helm's Deep, like those wide shots coming in, it's phenomenal. I mean, I know it's not really actually there, but I feel like I should be able to go to New Zealand and find actual Helm's Deep.
Hmm.
Obviously, the wall would be destroyed, but that's okay. So visually, just absolutely over the top expansive, but looks very, very realistic. All of the like little character moments from and between everybody, like throughout every bit of the lead up to the battle and through the battle and at the end of the battle, there are just so many small, amazing moments that are all of my favorite character interactions. Just like the when Gimli and Legolas come into Helm's Deep and Gimli tells Eowyn that Aragorn fell. Like, that is just the way his voice cracks when he says he fell. Like, every time, even though I know Aragorn is absolutely coming back and he's not dead, I still feel heartbroken.
Yeah.
The scene where he's talking to like the young boys who are going to have to fight even though they are way too young. That is just, a little bit of, and I don't recall that being in the book, but it may have been. But it is a very chilling scene because it just kind of sinks in that, like they are sending, then there's no choice because their other option is just to wait to be murdered by the opposing army if it breaks the defenses. So it is just a really stark look at this reality. If I mean not reality because it's Middle Earth, but it feels like reality.
Yeah.
And and then there is Gandalf, at first light on the fifth day.
Oh,
that
yes.
The scene that will every time give me chills. And even like during the battle. Okay, during the battle, there are so many freaking cool things. I gotta it is clearly a battle scene that was staged by someone who just really likes to watch cool shit happen in battles. Because there's so much stuff that is just like, oh my god, that happened. Oh my god, that happened. And yeah, I could just keep going on. So somebody else can say something now too, but I could talk about every little cool bit of it that I loved for forever.
I mean, that's what we're here for. I want to hear you guys go on about the Battle of Helm's Deep until the end of time, because it really is one of the, most impressive things, ever captured in film, which I don't think is like being hyperbolic. It remains like it might be the single most impressive, like large epic battle piece or like action piece that's ever been filmed. It's absolutely insane. And I feel like you're capturing, everything that's super special about it. Cause there are also like all those, like you're saying, like those amazing character moments that happen between, all of the great battle shots and, exhilarating action moments within it. So it's all it's the best.
It is. And then at the end, the bad guys all get eaten by a forest.
Yeah. What's not to love?
That's true.
That's just fantastic.
Man.
Yeah, Romona, what do you have on everything amazing about the Battle of Helm's Deep?
Well, repeat everything that RJ said. And it is the character moments that make it as amazing as it is, because it's not just a battle. Like I said earlier, you've grown to care about these characters. Even, Theoden, who you are just introduced to in this movie. He has moments where you kind of want to smack him in the face, but you also don't want to see him die. And there's just this feeling of helplessness, I guess, because they're going to be outnumbered. And then, like RJ mentioned, them giving this crappy little swords to like 12-year-old boys, and it's just, and again, kind of touching on the whole, sending young men off to war when they're probably not ready to be doing that. So, I remember feeling a very significant sense of dread the first time when I saw it in the theater. I remember that very clearly during Helm's Deep, because I hadn't read the book, so I didn't know who would survive and what would happen. And so I was just it was all new to me. So watching that, but you have also these little moments of humor right before the battle starts when Legolas asks Gimli if he wants a box because he can't see over the side. When he asks Aragorn to toss a dwarf, don't tell the elf, little moments like that
Yeah.
kind of like bring you back, kind of like, okay, not all is lost. Like it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
And then the elves show up, and even Helidir, I think his name's Helidir, when he dies, the elf, when Aragorn sees it happening, and he's just trying to like fight his way to him because they're friends. It's just really, that kind of shows you, an elf who's supposed to be immortal in a way is dead, and anyone could die in this movie. So I was kind of, I don't know, I was kind of panicking, kind of anxiety. It had that anxiety moment for me watching the battle, but
Yeah.
it was the way it's shot, the way it was directed. It just, God, you felt like you were there when they get the wooden trunk or whatever to fight their way into the back, and all the women and children are scared. You're just like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But yeah, I don't know. It was just, it didn't feel it. And I forgot how long the battle actually happens in this movie, like how long it lasts.
Mhm.
Doesn't feel like it. But like, while as I'm watching it, like I had to pause it every now and then to get up and go do something. But I was like, gosh, this is quite a bit of the movie. But at the same time, it's like I want to see more of it, so it was okay. But yeah, it was those character moments kind of made it the way. I don't know. There was just something about it. Legolas is, you know, I don't. What do you even call what he's doing on the ladder? I don't know. I don't know
Is
how
it
it
like parkour?
parkour. Yeah, it's just like one of many things that you see him do that's like physically impossible. Um,
He like surfs down the staircase,
yeah, that's it.
shooting
He slips
arrows.
down the staircase on the shield or whatever it was. And I remember being in the theater and people cheering when he does that shit. Like they get so
Oh
excited for
yeah,
it. But yeah, it's just, that's what made it so good, was the direction of it, how real it looked. Because some of those, I'm sure some of those orcs and stuff were CGI, but you can't tell because
Mhm.
they had so many practical effects and costumes and stuff up
Yeah,
front.
there's still a massive number of
Oh,
extras.
yeah, just so many. And that's the big difference, I think, with this battle compared to what comes in Return of the King, because the Return of the King, the Battle of Gondor, is massive. It's so much bigger than Helm's Deep, but yet Helm's Deep, I thought, felt, I guess, there's more tension there. It felt more
Mhm.
real to me. I felt like the stakes were even, the stakes are obviously high, them trying to defend Gondor, but it felt like if they failed at Helm's Deep, it was over. You know what I mean? So I
yeah,
just felt like there's something about Helm's Deep that really could not be touched by anything else that would come in
Yeah.
Return of the King, and even the Hobbit, like the Battle of Five Armies, that is so obviously like CGI to me. There's so many things in the Hobbit that kind of was like, "Ugh, why didn't they like go back to special, like practical effects like they did with Lord of the Rings?" And I think that's what makes it hold up so well. The Helm's Deep is because they did use so many practical effects for this movie that
Yeah.
you don't see like, okay, well that's clearly fake. Like it just, everything about it is designed to last, and I appreciate that. But yeah, when Gandalf shows up, I feel relief every time. I know he's coming. You know he's coming.
But
But
it's
when you
still the
show,
best.
yeah, when you show up, you're like, oh, thank God, Gandalf is here with the Riders of Rohirrim. So I was
The
very
first
excited.
first light of the fifth day.
Yes, it's brilliant.
There is I I agree with and RJ, I'm gonna kick this question over to you, but I think I agree that Helm's Deep in some ways feels like more real and less like big fantasy than the Battle of what is it? Is it Minas Tirith?
Minas Tirith,
In
yeah.
yeah.
Return of the King. I don't know if it's like the nighttime setting or because it is this like physical fortress that they're trying to hold down. And yes, they are fighting orcs and like the Urukai and all that stuff, but it still feels like that feels like a real life battle from like medieval times or something. It does not feel like a moment out of this like grand high fantasy kind of story. So RJ, I don't know if you have similar feelings about Helm's Deep versus like some of the other battles that we get within the series.
Yes, Helm's Deep is the best. I think I think the night setting and the rain, the fact that they're kind of like trapped into this fortress, and there is nowhere to go. There is nothing but a sea of is it Urukai? Is it orcs? No, it's the Urukai, right?
Yeah, I thought it was both, but it might just be
okay. There's just a sea of them and a very limited amount of people in Helm's Deep, and it feels like Gondor is bigger, like they have more of an army with them. Of course, Helm's Deep, the Rohirrim are gone. That's like their army is not there until the very end. So it feels they feel more outnumbered and underpowered for what's happening. And you just have this sense that, Aragorn is going to have to pull all of them through just on his willpower and the help of his friends, because Theoden has just come out of being, mind controlled. And basically, yeah. And does not trust himself and doesn't think that he can, can do anything but what he's doing. Which is, I think, an understandable position, even if as the viewer, like, that's really stupid. You shouldn't do it. You should listen to Aragorn.
Yeah.
I think from his perspective, I always think like, yes, that was probably be how I would feel, like, just hunker down and protect your people because you've been failing them. And, but I also think there's something to be said for, Helm's Deep is grand, of course, and it is epic. The Battle of Minas Tirith, it's almost too epic.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much going on.
There is a lot. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and Helm's Deep is very condensed.
Yeah.
But it is like, Romona, like you're saying, it's like 20 or 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
Which, again, when you're thinking about, like, if you think about like the history of like large battle action set pieces within movies, this was an insane undertaking in terms of like, we're going to have, let's call it 25 minutes of just like action sequences of just battle, just straight battle. Like, that was unheard of. And the fact that Peter Jackson and the entire, cast and crew of filmmakers, like, we can't give them enough credit for being able to pull this off. Like, doing makeup for all of those, like, Urukai, extras or whatever, cutting back and forth between like CG shots and live action shots, like building this set or like building miniatures of this set, blowing up the miniatures, like the sound mixing, like all of it is just like absolutely bonkersly insane. And it's just, what the end product remains like one of the most incredible things that we've ever seen. I was saying that I used to watch, I'm a little bit younger than you guys. So I was watching this movie when I was like 11, 12 years old on DVD after it came out. And RJ, you'll remember this from last week's episode, but this was like, a movie that I would watch every day after school. And like my friends and I, we would just skip to Helm's Deep. We were like, don't care about anything else. Don't care about Frodo in the Ring. I don't care, but we'll stop at the Wolves of Isengard and then we're going straight to Helm's Deep.
Nice. Nice. I like that.
Like, that's how amazing it is.
Yeah, I still do that every day after school. I don't,
I might do it today when we finish recording.
It's it did win Best Visual Effects at the Oscars that year. So not
enough. It should win more.
And cinematography. Very well deserved.
Win more.
It
give
should.
it.
And, you know, I feel like, and I understand why they kind of waited for Return of the King to finally give it all of the Oscars that it deserved. But God, the Battle of Helm's Deep alone, I think, could have made a really good case for winning Best Picture that year. I don't know. It is part of the movie that it's very hard to take your eyes off of it.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's condensed. You know, whereas Minas Tirith is, you have, you know, Gandalf and Pippin over here, and you have like the people on the ground, and
Mhm.
you know, the Faramir, and blah 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 blah. So you have all this stuff happening all at once in Minas Tirith, and Aragorn trying to get the army of the dead, and but here it's like Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and obviously Theoden and their allies. And there's something about like being the underdog, and obviously they're the underdog in the third movie too. But it all takes place in this one spot. It's a small area. You have women and children hunkered. You know, if they get through that wall, everyone's dead. So
Mhm.
it's like you said, the fact that they could pull it off, and it's just, I mean, the whole freaking trilogy that they could pull it off and pull it off as well as they did, that they actually came out with like a insane quality of a movie. Um,
Yeah.
is just, I mean, if I were Peter Jackson, I'd probably never direct again. I'd be like, I already made my, you know,
Yeah. I made the best thing that.
the
Yeah.
best
My
thing I could
magnum
possibly
opus.
make in my
Yeah.
entire life. Like I will never top these movies. But I do think Battle of Helm's Deep is probably top five, maybe top three moments of the entire trilogy for me. Um, it never gets old watching it ever.
Oh yeah. RJ, for you, I assume it's top one.
Yes. Yes, top one for sure.
There we go. I do want to come back to RJ. I think you were saying, like how much of that scene is just like Aragorn, you know, through his force of will, like willing these people to resist this like terrible evil that is trying to bear down on them. Uh,
Mhm.
but before we get back to that, Ramona, you mentioned like how insane it is that this whole trilogy was pulled off. And I'm sure we spoke about it in the previous episode, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the next episode. But we should probably, and like I think everyone knows this, like especially if you're listening to this episode, but it is worthwhile to, you know, stop on the point that like these three movies were shot and edited at the same time. So
Yeah.
like it wasn't like, okay, we're making Fellowship of the Ring, and then like we hope that that does okay, and if it does, then we'll then go
Yeah.
and make the
Hmm.
Two Towers. So there's like a lot of consistency throughout the
Yeah.
movies rather, and I think that adds to the quality. Like there's no drop off in quality because they were essentially all made with the same level of care and intention, and at the same time, like with the same sort of like director's focus.
Yeah.
And that could have been bad if like all the movies sucked, but I do think that it obviously
That,
helps.
yeah, that's a good point. The fact that they were filmed back to back to back all at the same time. Like you said, the continuity, the consistency, the quality. I think that definitely helped, and it's really weird because that feels almost unheard of these days. You know what I mean? For anyone to
Mhm.
walk into a studio and say, "I want to adapt this incredible novel. I need this much money. We want to do it as a trilogy." Shoot in New Zealand for the next, I think it was what, two years maybe. I forget how long they were there for,
Mhm.
but how many studios today would be like, "Oh yeah, let's do that," and then we
Yeah.
put it on streaming on Netflix. You know what I mean?
Or they would do it and it would be like, oh,
Yeah.
we're rushing the director through,
Right.
you know, filming these, and like we need like one cut out by you know, December, and then the next film needs to be done by like June or whatever. So like
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
still was with like the yearly release, there was
Oh,
still
I
enough
loved it.
time
I love the
for
yearly release.
you know, Peter Jackson and his team to like work on like editing and refining the final product, but also because like they were working on everything at the same time. Like
Yeah.
there was I think it's just like the quality level remained the same throughout. There was no like obvious dip in terms of like the heart and intention and like love that was poured into to each individual movie.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of why like all three of them are so
Incredible.
amazing.
And they
And
were all released in December every year, 2001, 2002, 2003.
mhm.
And so it was really 2002 December. We had just gotten married that year in October.
Nice,
And
congrats.
I think I was more excited about Lord of the Rings than it was my wedding.
That's legitimate.
I'm going to make sure my husband doesn't hear this podcast. But um, the fact that they were all released in December, I can very distinctly remember like walking out of the theater for Fellowship and Two Towers and then being like, God, I can't wait till next December. You know what I mean? Like just having
Mhm.
something, knowing it was going to come out the next year, having that to look forward to, and just being like, God, just let me get through the year and survive it so I can see the last Lord of the Rings movie before it's over. But then you leave after Return of the King and you're like, oh shit, it's over. You know what I mean? Like the amount of very disappointed, kind of that feeling like, oh, it's the end. Like we're not going to be able to revisit. Well, I guess we can
Yeah.
revisit whenever we want,
But
but like we're not going back. You know what I mean?
as
And very
RJ
few,
knows,
yeah, very few
all you can
films
do is
do that to
rewatch
me.
them.
And
Just
yeah, and I do. I absolutely do.
extended version or theatrical. I know RJ's extended
Like
version.
it's a, you know what, it's a, now that once I saw the extended, I feel like it's hard to go back to the theatrical. I did watch the theatrical today because I was short on time, and that's really the only reason. Because I was like, I really want to watch this again before that we record, just so I have it fresh in my mind. But I mean, there are days, especially for some reason during the holiday season, I'm like, I really want to watch Fellowship again, and I will. I'll put it on the TV, and It's got to be the extended version. Um, I don't think anything is taken away from the theatrical. I don't think if I
Mhm.
would like today, I watched the theatrical and I still loved it. Like I said, the theatrical versions are perfection, but there's just I think for fans, especially the extended versions, being able to see some of that extra footage that they cut out is it just makes it even better.
RJ, you're extended, right?
Yes. No, yeah.
How
I
long
mean,
is
really,
the extended?
I'll
Is
watch
that
any version, but
yeah? Is it four? How long is the extended?
4 or 4.5. I don't remember.
Oh dang, still great.
Amazing.
Very
I
long.
I
Very
got to
long.
get on the extended. I have all the extended versions, but I typically still watch theatrical. I think just because that's what I'm used to.
Have you
Um,
seen the extended?
I've seen the extended versions of all of them,
Okay,
but typically my rewatches are theatrical.
gotcha.
Um, just I think I'm just a force of habit at this point. But
I will just like throw this in there just because it's a nice memory for me. Is after the extended versions came out, I remember we had picked my family, like my husband and I, and then like this was before we had kids. Um, went to my parents' house with my sisters, and we spent the whole day watching the extended versions back to back to back. And
that's that.
it was a long day, but it was so much fun. And like very few films really bring family together the way that did. So it was really
Mhm.
nice. I think maybe I have a soft spot for these movies because of that.
No, I've with like friends and stuff. We've talked, so many times about doing a full day of watching the extended versions, and I think that they're like full, like Reddit boards that like lay
Yeah.
out like what like different foods that you can eat. So they're
Oh,
like
that's
themed,
awesome.
like there's like
A
a
menu?
themed like Hobbit like breakfast menu that you can make, and then like different like potato stew or something like in the afternoon, like during the
For
Two
breakfast.
Towers. Yeah,
That's
you can have
Wow,
incredible.
11sies and
that is
everything.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
so definitely still something that I have to do at some point.
Yes.
But back to the movie and back to Helm's Deep. RJ, I want to circle back on what you were saying about Aragorn and like how his character really sort of like comes into himself in these Helm's Deep scenes where it's hard to tell if the character, and Viggo Mortensen plays it so well. Like
Mhm.
that character must be freaking out on the inside, but he has to be so tough for all of these people around him. And I feel like it's just like, it's such an amazing moment of character development. It's played so well by Viggo Mortensen. So I just wanted to, see if you guys had any other thoughts on sort of like how all that stuff plays out around Aragorn, and maybe like just like his character development throughout this entire film.
Oh, so I think, of course, Viggo Mortensen, amazing. It is very well done how he, see him. He's reluctant to, accept his destiny as king, but in this movie, I think you see the first inklings of him feeling the kind of innate urge and responsibility and uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like the ability, there we go. Just having
Mhm.
the ability to lead and trying to stand back because Theoden is king and he's trying to just help steer him in what he thinks is the correct direction. And when that's not really working, he can't can't sit back and be a background character. He feels the need to step up and pull everybody through, and that is what that's why he's our king. He
Mm-hmm.
isn't some power hungry maniac. He is just a natural leader, and he has a
Yeah.
very you know he is strong physically, mentally, and he cares about everybody.
And you see a lot of that too. You kind of see like that push for him to speak up more and to, kind of when Theoden is kind of like, oh, at Battle of Helm's Deep when they're about to fight their way through that wall, he's like, oh, well, Theoden kind of is thrown in the towel a little bit, and Aragorn has to be the one to like step up and be like, you said we would fight and this and that, and he gets them all like rallied. And I feel like a lot of that happened after he fell over that cliff. Because it did seem like he was a little
Mhm.
reluctant before then, and then after he survives that and he returns to Helm's Deep, is kind of you see a bigger change in him after that, where he's pushing back and he's getting louder, and making sure people understand what is expected of them. And I love that scene between him and the little boy, you know, kind of boosting him a little bit with the sword, and the little boy says it's hopeless, and he kind of steps up and gives him some hope. And I love the character development of Aragorn. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Vigo scene that most women love of him opening those doors after
Men too.
returning
Yes.
after returning from his little swim downstream. So
I don't
uh,
think anyone's ever looked cooler.
man, I'll tell you,
Yep.
I do not I do not find Viggo Mortensen very attractive in anything else. But the Lord of the Rings, yeah,
When he's opening those
when he's
doors.
opening those doors is when I was like, I get it now. Like, I
Yeah.
think I understand.
If you've ever walked through double doors, like we've all tried to open double doors the way that Aragorn opens double
Slow
doors. We
motion,
have
yep.
never
Oh,
looked as cool or
nobody.
sexy as he
And, and,
does.
and nobody ever will again. I believe that with all of my being. But yeah, anyway, I do. His character development is probably one of the strongest in the entire series, and I do love how he kind of came into his own
Mhm.
during the Battle of Helm's Deep. You see those flashes of Theoden is a king, but like RJ said, he had worm tongue in his ear for so long that he's probably still living kind of in a fog, trying to get back to who he was before that and trying to um, be a good king again. And I think that he has a lot of doubts. And I love that Aragorn kind of steps up and, kind of reminds him why they're there and what their duty is. And I love it when they decide to ride out together. It's a great scene.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of especially this movie, and I guess we get to it in a little bit in the next movie, but is about like the like failures of the leadership of men specifically. And not to say that like Theoden is like a bad king, but like he has obviously made some missteps in like being susceptible to Wormtongue and Saruman and like everything that comes with that. And obviously like Boromir in the first one being someone who is like very easily tempted by the ring. So like there's definitely like a through line of leadership sort of like failing these people. And you can see that Theoden is like he's shitting his pants at Helm's Deep. He's like he's like I'm in so over my head right now. I have no idea what to do. And Aragorn throughout all of it is so steady, such a natural leader. He is able to inspire all of the people around him and like lead through example, but also with his words and his action and like all of that like amazing stuff. So it is really like beautiful to see that character sort of like naturally grow into the role that he's so reluctant to take on, but is like clearly so fit for. And it's just like, like who doesn't love a natural leader? Someone who is not necessarily like power thirsty or doing it because they like think that they're supposed to be doing it, but like has no idea what they're doing. Theoden, or like the list goes on and on. But like we need leaders like Aragorn in not only in Middle Earth, but probably in real life too.
Wouldn't that be nice? That would be nice. Yeah. Man.
Yeah. So I feel like Helm's Deep obviously like is the highlight of this movie, but are there any other moments or scenes that we haven't spoken about yet that either of you want to bring up?
I would like to give a little nod of appreciation. I know we love Andy Serkis, but and this role is it's smaller, but it was so effective. Brad Dourif as Wormtongue was incredible. There's just something so slippery and snaky and manipulative about him. Very wormy, yes. Good word. No, he, like I said, he's not on screen much, but with what he did do, man, he ran with it. And Brad Dourif is such an underrated actor anyway, that it just, oh God, every time I watch the scene when he's talking in Theoden's ear or to Eowyn, he kind of loses some steam a little bit once he joins up with Saruman. But those first few scenes with him, I just thought were so effective to show just how Theoden got to where he was at that point. That he could control him just by whispering in his ear is very scary for a villain, and I think that he's very underrated in the second movie, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. A worthwhile shout out for sure.
Yeah.
My thing to mention would be Sam's speech at the end, in the ruins of Osgiliath, as they're with Faramir and fighting the Nazgul, and he does the speech about heroes and stories, and it is kind of interspersed with scenes from the battle there and what his friends are going through, and man, Sean Astin just kills it. It is every time I'm crying by the end.
Yep. It's very emotional.
It is.
I mean, it triggers Faramir to let them go, which is, I don't know. It's every time I hear it, it kind of gets you a little choked up because it's so relatable, especially to today. It's so relatable. So it's just like, you need a little Samwise in your life to give you some hope. And he does that. And he does that at the end of the first movie too, when Frodo's leaving on the boat and he says, "I'm going alone." And Sam says, "Of course you are. And I'm coming with you." And it's just, that's the kind of character Sam is. So yeah, when he gives that little speech, you kind of know everything's going to be okay, which monologues like that can be really sentimental and maybe overly so, but I think it struck the perfect chord, especially like RJ said, how they interspersed the scenes with their friends going through what they're going through too. It's just very effective.
Yeah. All roads lead back to Sam.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think Bob said it last week, but Sam is really the heart and soul, the true hero of the story. So, very fitting that it, it ends again with him giving us all the hope that we sort of need.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would mention that we didn't really talk about much, but kind of going back to whether or not J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were actually homies in real life. The Gandalf of it all, the whole, Jesus figure
Yeah.
that he is.
Coming back from the dead.
Yeah, I think we should just mention that that's a thing that happens in this movie, and it's pretty dope.
Oh, yeah. When
Very dope.
are you talking about like the very beginning when he's fighting the Balrog, or like when he shows himself to the trio?
Like when he shows himself to the trio, there's also that great tease of Merry and Pip seeing him in the forest, but we don't actually know that it's him.
You need to get Saruman.
And then when Theoden's like, your powers don't work here, Gandalf the Grey, and then he takes off his robe,
yes, it's like you done fucked up.
That is also one of my favorite scenes when they're, and not even like, I mean, obviously Gandalf is super cool in that scene, but just Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn just wrecking shop like around him. It's like this dance. He's slowly walking, and there's just absolutely slaying all of the King's guards. It's
so amazing. You can tell that the three actors are having so much fun in the background, like throwing like fake punches at like extras and stuff. Like,
so good.
Orlando Bloom like looks like he's about to crack. Just like throwing like random punches at people. It's so good.
I love it.
But yeah, I think we kind of covered it all. I don't know if you guys had anything else. I will say I'm very proud of us that we went this whole time and none of us mentioned the really annoying bit of trivia about this movie.
Oh, the toe. You see how I knew exactly what you were talking about? I knew exactly what you're talking about when Viggo breaks his toe. That it's everywhere.
You're gonna have to cut this out. That's your fault.
Oh man, yeah. I have in my notes which of us is going to mention the thing about Viggo breaking his toe.
God, I think that we just assume everybody knows already.
Yeah,
what happened when he kicks the helmet.
In case there's anyone who is listening who doesn't know, I think we shouldn't explain any further.
No,
we'll just leave it at that.
They can Google it, and I'm sure that there'll be a bajillion videos and memes about it when they do.
About a gazillion. Amazing. This has been obviously another incredible discussion, a very fun discussion about a super, super, super amazing movie. Should we do some recommendations for it?
Yes, that would be great.
We should.
All right. We'll explain in case there are any new listeners who don't know, what we do with recommendations. But for each movie in the canon, we recommend 3 things per guest host to check out. If you like said movie, of those 3 things, at least one of them has to be another movie. The other 2, however, can be any and everything else. It could be a book or a TV show. It could be an album. It can be a video game or a board game or, a restaurant or really anything. We like to get super, creative and all that good stuff with our recommendations. For any movies that we recommend, they can't be movies that are also in the canon. So we cannot recommend The Fellowship of the Ring or Return of the King or, anything else that might be in the canon. But everything else is fair game. And we stick to 3 and only 3. Any bonus recommendations will result in service of suspension from the show. So With
Sailor.
that, yeah. No, it's Duke. Duke
Is
is
it Duke? Oh, okay.
Duke's the main culprit.
Aw.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tisk.
Sailor, that's the one rule that Sailor follows,
That's amazing.
surprisingly.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sailor. I take it back.
There's no way he's listening. He doesn't care about us. All right. With all that being said, let's jump into some recommendations. I think for the order, we can go Romona and then RJ and then Raph. It's the 3 R's.
It is the 3 R's. Look at that.
We did it.
Yes.
Triple R. Okay, so I'm first.
Yep.
Okay.
First up.
My first recommendation is a book, believe it or not. And I am going to recommend for fans of this movie, it is called Anything You Can Imagine, Peter Jackson and the Making of Middle Earth by Ian Nathan. I read this book. It is about the journey Peter Jackson endured to make these films, and it follows him, kind of gives Peter Jackson's backstory as a kid growing up, his love of film, the films he made prior to The Lord of the Rings, and then it goes into massive detail about the making of Lord of the Rings and goes all the way down through the Oscar wins. And I read this book when it came out. It is fascinating, especially if you love the movies. There's so much behind the scenes stories, some trivia, fun stories, Sean Bean being terrified of helicopters, so he's walking up a mountain to where he's got to film. Just little things like that. It's that I never knew. So definitely check out Anything You Can Imagine by Ian Nathan if you love these movies.
Amazing. I love it. Adding that to the reading list for sure. Nice. RJ, what's your first recommendation?
My first one, I will go with the one movie on my list. And it is this is maybe a bit of a stretch, but the 2009 J.J. Abrams epic Star Trek.
Oh,
And I made that leap because Carl Urban is in both, and he's awesome.
Yes, he is.
And yes, he is. I am a huge fan of the original Star Trek movies, and so I was real skeptical when this came out. But my husband talked me into watching it when it came out on DVD, and I just loved it. And I think as its own separate thing, it is an a really fun movie, and Carl Urban is just so cool as Bones, Dr. McCoy, who was one of my favorite characters in the original. And
Nice.
so you should go watch it, even if you've watched it before, because it's fun.
It is good. It's a good movie.
One of the few good things that J.J. Abrams has done, and on this podcast, we are huge Carl Urban stans. Anything that he's in, it's going to be a banger. You know that he's going to be awesome in it. Like, he should be in everything. He's definitely one of those people who you're like, yeah, that guy should be in everything, because everything is made better when Carl Urban is around.
100%.
I love it. I love it. Okay, for my first recommendation, I'm going to go with like a really super basic one, but I have to do it because it was such a formative thing for me in younger years. But the Two Towers PS2 video game was so much fun. Some people would say it changed lives. I am some people. This video game kicked ass.
What PlayStation was this? Which
PlayStation 2.
Oh man, that's so long ago.
Absolute banger of a game. That's really all that I have on it.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain it, but yeah.
If you like this movie, there's a really sick video game version of it that came out in 2002 for the PlayStation 2, and it was, not to be. I feel like every person is nostalgic for when their generation was like 13.
Yeah.
But it was the best time in media to be alive, to watch the Two Towers on DVD, and then you take that DVD out of your PlayStation 2 and you put the Two Towers video game into that same PS2 and you start playing it and you are Legolas and you're, slashing up orcs and stuff, like it's the best. So
Nice. I like it.
there you go.
Okay.
Romona, what's your second recommendation?
Okay, so my second recommendation is from 2017, directed by Guy Ritchie, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
Oh,
And the
nice.
reason that I'm saying this is because it did not get a lot of love at the box office, and I don't think it got a lot of love critically. But I thought this movie was incredibly fun. It was so much fun. It is, the kind of reimagined tale of King Arthur, and I found it to have some similar parallels to Aragorn's story. There's the
Mhm.
rightful heir to the throne. He's given a legendary sword. Aragorn and Arthur have some of those similar reluctant hero traits about them.
Mhm.
And Aragorn has Gandalf. Arthur has Merlin, who in this movie actually comes in the form of a mage rather than the bearded, Merlin. Um, Aragorn has to defeat a Dark Lord, and Arthur has to defeat a power hungry king. So I see there are a lot of parallels there, and it's a fun, entertaining movie. Nothing you have to think too deeply on. It's Guy Ritchie. If you like his style, I think you would like this one a lot.
Nice. I like that. Also,
Yeah,
now that you're saying it out loud, I've never thought about it, but like it's so obvious how much of Aragorn was pulled from the story of
Arthur.
King Arthur. Yeah. Yeah.
I could see that being some inspiration for sure.
Nice. I like that. I haven't seen it, but
It was good. I
I
think you
can
would like it.
I can get down with Guy Ritchie. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Nice. RJ, what's your second pick?
Yeah. So second pick is Troll Hunters: Tales of Arcadia, which is an animated fantasy series that
Nice.
follows a I think he's 16-year-old named Jim Lake Jr. And he becomes the first human troll hunter, the protector of this underground world of trolls, and he has a magic amulet that was created by Merlin. So
Nice.
um, and he's got a you know group of friends that help him, and just there is a series, and then there is a second series that is based on, like, it's in the same world but through the eyes of some different characters, and then I think it's a movie, like a that kind of wraps the series up. But it's one that my whole family loves. All my kids, my husband, we'll all sit down and watch it, and it is fun. There's drama. It's very, uh, I think, unique as far as, I mean, there's, obviously there's a lot of kind of formula stuff there as far as, you know, the reluctant hero and mentors and friends, and they go on adventures, but it's a lot of fun.
Nice. I like that. Amazing pick. Also, very cool that your whole family loves it. I love that. Um, okay, sweet. For my second recommendation, I am going to recommend an album, and anyone who listened to last week's episode probably has some idea where I'm going with this. Um, but on the track Ramble On, Gollum is very much so mentioned. I think there are some other references to Middle Earth, but because Gollum makes more of an appearance and is a much bigger character within this movie, I figured I would recommend Led Zeppelin 2 because they're the greatest band of all time, and that album kicks ass. So, and Two Towers, Led Zeppelin 2, all that stuff.
It all fits.
It all
I think we
matches
should
up.
recommend Led Zeppelin for at least one recommendation every show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
That's
probably could.
we definitely should be
so.
doing that. And RJ, I'm sorry that I stole that recommendation from you.
That's okay.
Did you really have that too?
Yes, I was going to recommend it last week. And
Oh,
yeah.
oh
So
damn.
that's okay though. That's
Okay.
okay.
Oopsies.
Okay, people have taken mine too. Always got to panic and find a backup. So my last, my last recommendation, I'm going to go with the basic pick myself with the Hobbit trilogy. It
Nice.
is a good place to start, I think, if you want to return to Middle Earth and revisit that universe. Frodo's uncle, yes, Bilbo is his uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bilbo, he sets out with Gandalf and a group of dwarves to journey to the Lonely Mountain to help the dwarves reclaim their home and a lot of gold from the dragon. Okay, is it Smaug or Smog?
Smog,
Oh,
right?
Smog.
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard it both ways. I wasn't sure. So I don't know that this story needed to be told in 3 movies. And I think that they are kind of missing a little bit of the magic from the trilogy, the original trilogy, but they're still fun to watch, especially if you're on a Middle Earth kick. So plus Martin Freeman as Bilbo is a joy, and you kind of get to revisit some of the characters that we love so much in the Lord of the Rings. So yeah, the Hobbit trilogy.
Nice. I have not really watched them. I've tried to stay away because I didn't want to poo-poo the memory of the original trilogy.
You know what? It won't. They're not on par with the original trilogy, and I think
Mhm.
if you go into that with that knowledge, you'll probably just enjoy them for what
Yeah.
they are.
I was talking to some friends about it today, and they had mentioned that there's like someone like on the internet did like a cut of like they put the 3 movies together, cut out like a lot of the like excess stuff
Hmm.
and sort of like rearranged some scenes so it's like closer to the actual book version.
Really, I have to watch that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like only like available like not on like the dark web, but like
Well,
it's like not like readily available to watch, but apparently it's that cut is out there and they were advocating for it as being um
the release.
more enjoyable
Nice.
than the trilogy. But I haven't given the trilogy a try, so now that you're recommending it,
Yeah.
maybe I should
Good.
give it a proper try.
I'm gonna Google dark web.
Yeah, well, don't Google dark web. That'll
Oh, don't Google that.
yeah. That just ask Sailor what that means.
Okay.
He'll tell you all
I'll
about
send him. I'll send him a DM for some
it.
information.
Yeah.
Next week, Ramona's on a watch list.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I'm definitely already on those lists. Don't worry.
Before we get ourselves into any more trouble, RJ, what's your last recommendation?
Well, okay, so last week Bob recommended the game Dungeons and Dragons, which I also, was going to be one of my hit picks.
Oh, jeez.
But this week I am going to recommend the movie Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves from 2023, which is, a band of adventurers embark on an epic quest, and there's a, lot of magic-y stuff, and it's a lot of shenanigans, but it's a really fun movie.
I heard it was really
And
good.
you don't have to have played Dungeons and Dragons to get it.
Yeah.
So, but if you have, then you'll recognize a lot of stuff. So
Sweet. I've heard it's
fun.
great.
Yeah. I did hear good things about it.
You recommended 2 Chris Pine movies, right? Is he also in that?
I did, and I didn't mention Chris Pine either time, but he's awesome, and I love him.
Yeah.
I think he does a great job in both movies.
Chris Fine.
Nice. There we go. I love it.
I have to go back and figure out if he's in Troll Hunters somehow, and if
Yeah,
he's not,
he
he
might.
probably should have been.
That would be so funny.
There's got to be some connection somehow. I love it. I don't think that Chris Pine is in my last recommendation, but I have to recommend a movie. We spoke about it. Andy Serkis's performance here is incredible, and I think another one of his better performances was in another Peter Jackson movie. A movie that I've gone back and forth on, but I am now very much so in the bag for. I'm recommending Peter Jackson's version of King Kong.
Yes,
There's
great movie.
some really good work from Andy Serkis as well.
You know, I recall watching King Kong, Peter Jackson's version, with my family when it came out on DVD. And there's a scene where there's a plane and it kind of dives to the right really quickly. And my sister legit followed it and fell off the couch. It was the weirdest. It was like, what on earth? Yeah, she was that invested and just kind of zoom right down. So that's what I remember.
Amazing. I can't say that's ever happened. But you know.
Well, if you knew my sister, you would understand. So it's good.
Yeah. That's watching movies with real
intention. She was into it.
fully giving yourself over to the cinematic experience.
Absolutely.
I will always advocate for. So yes. That's amazing. Well, great stuff all around. Romona, RJ, thank you both for joining. This has been an absolute blast, an absolute pleasure. Before we get out of here and say our final goodbyes, is there anything on the website or elsewhere that folks should be looking out for from either of you, you know, whatever it may be?
Just my weekly rom-com rewind, and you can also read all my rom-com reviews and stuff at the romcomcatalog.com as well.
Sweet. I love it. Always good stuff over there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I have, I think once this when this comes out, it will be last week, my Canon article on the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So look for that.
Oh,
that should be awesome. And I think I just confused myself with time because this is coming out after that. Well, yeah. Anyway, so it should be on. It should be on there. And then I also have. I recently started a new podcast, not movie related, but
hell yeah,
I'm a nerd, so movies will come up occasionally anyway. It is called ADHD Adultish, and it is it's about, you know, the kind of chaos that comes with being an adult with ADHD and trying to do all the life stuff. And so
that sounds like a podcast right up my alley.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm gonna check it out for sure.
Yeah, definitely gonna check that out. That sounds awesome. I assume people can find it wherever it is that they're listening to this, or, you know, wherever else they may find their shows. But I feel like that's an awesome show. Definitely, like, a lot of people out there who can relate to that, connect with that. So that's really sweet that you're doing that.
Warning, there is some cursing, because that's
what the fuck.
I try not to on here because I know, you know, like, Raph's like, this is a family show.
Yeah.
Oh God, leave me then.
I say that, but I don't know how true it is. That's okay. We'll be back next week with Return of the King talk. Rounding out season 4, rounding out our Lord of the Rings trilogy. This has been, you know, another great, successful season here at the Canon. We're already looking forward to season 5 and everything that will, you know, come with that. But before we get to that, we got to finish Lord of the Rings. Dave Wilson, who has been on the show before, one of our favorite guests from outside of the Saw contributor realm, will be joining me for that discussion. So we hope to see you there. And as always, in the meantime, we will see all of you lovely people in the wasteland. Bye, everyone.